So just recently, the GOES-S mission launched from Kennedy Space Center. And what exactly is GOES-S? Why is it important? And where did it end up in space? Those are just a few of the questions that we're going to answer in this episode. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about why GOES is important, or the mission itself. Now, personally, I have a connection with it because I worked as an intern on the GOES project in Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. Now, what is the actual purpose of the mission? Well, the GOES satellites act as environmental or weather satellites that keep track of different patterns, different wildfires, and different activity that happens in the atmosphere so that we can know what kind of weather to prepare for. Now, the mission itself launched on March 1st, which, as this video comes out, would be yesterday, at 5:02 p.m. Eastern Time, and launched on an Atlas V rocket out of Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So where exactly did GOES end up after launch? Well, it started out in a geostationary transfer orbit, and this orbit is special because it takes you from the low Earth orbit to a geostationary orbit. Now I'll get to what that means in a second. Now this orbit, the geostationary transfer orbit, has a perigee, or the closest distance to Earth, of about 100 to 200 miles, and has a farthest distance of Earth about 22 to 26,000 miles. Now, why is that one side much farther away? Well, it's interesting because geostationary orbits, which it's trying to get to, are orbits where the amount of time it takes to go around the Earth is exactly the amount of time that it takes Earth to revolve around its axis, so a day. Now, why is that important? Because if you end up in a geostationary orbit that has an inclination of 0, meaning you stay on the same plane, that means you'll orbit the Earth at the exact same rate that it spins, which means that you'll always be above the exact same point on the equator. So if you were standing on the equator and there's a geostationary satellite above you, that satellite would always be directly above your head as long as you stood in the same place. And that is not true for many other spacecraft and satellites in any other orbit, because typically, as you can see in this picture, they go all over the place. So where exactly is GOES-S ending up? Well, it's actually going to be replacing an old GOES mission, GOES-15, which is going to be in the west position, a longitude of 135 degrees west, and it's going to be looking at the western coast of the United States. That is why it's called GOES-West, because there's always two operating GOES missions, GOES-East and GOES-West, that focus on the two separate coasts and expand off all the way from the furthest east, which would be the western coast of Africa, all the way to New Zealand. So these two satellites, two geostationary satellites, can cover a lot of ground with just being in one place in space. So what are some of the capabilities of GOES-S? Well, GOES-S is very similar to GOES-R, which launched a few years ago, in terms of instrumentation. And this is because this is the new era, almost like a new smartphone. This is the new era of satellites that are going to be replacing the old GOES missions. Now it's able to do infrared imaging and be able to see where different thermal maps exist. It can also make lightning maps. As you can see in this video, it shows where lightning is occurring on the different locations in the United States. In addition, it also does a little bit of solar measurements, or it takes data about what the sun is doing, which means it's able to say, okay, there's some solar activity, we need to be careful, we need to change some of our satellites to protect themselves. And in addition, it also does just in-space magnetometer data, so it sees what is the magnetic field like where it is, and how does that change over time. But most importantly, GOES is a weather satellite, and it takes high-quality images of cloud formations and wildfires that occur on Earth to see how can we effectively combat those things, or how can we help people be weather ready. As the GOES project is a joint mission between NASA and NOAA, it's really important that we can get information from the satellite back down to Earth in time, because every minute that it takes to get that data could be a minute faster that we can let people know what's going on in terms of tornadoes, in terms of wildfires, and in terms of hurricanes. And these are three major things that impact us on a yearly basis and could save hundreds if not thousands of lives. That is why GOES is an important mission in terms of not only understanding space, but also understanding what's going on here on Earth. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one.